Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to the bustling streets of 17 and MD's Boston. You're there, boots clacking against cobblestones still damp from a midnight rain. The city smells like salt ink and something faintly burnt. There's tension in the air, almost visible, curling in doorways and echoing off tavern signs. You pass an alley where someone's painted a snake chopped in pieces on the wall. Join or die, and someone else has scrawled "Loyalist" beneath it, crossed out in thick charcoal. You've stumbled into one of history's most unsettling brewing storms. And just to be clear, if you had to live through it, you probably wouldn't survive more than a week without accidentally insulting the wrong side, catching dysentery, or missing a tax payment. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking by the Old South Meeting House where tonight's crowd is louder than usual. A few are shouting, many are whispering, and the rest are simply waiting, watching one another, waiting for someone to flinch first. There's talk of taxes, those slippery, infuriating levies like the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, the Townshend duties. British Parliament an ocean away is treating the colonies like a mildly disobedient cash register. But you're not here for the economic arguments. You're listening to the barkeep mutter something about his third shipment of molasses being impounded. He's furious. And behind that fury is fear. You see, these taxes aren't just numbers. They're shackles with seals. The average colonial American at this point isn't thinking in lofty Enlightenment ideals. They're thinking about missing income, unfair laws, and a government that doesn't seem to listen. Even the word revolution would have sounded dramatic at the time. But still, the embers are here glowing quietly beneath the city's daily grind. Historians still debate whether the American Revolution was truly inevitable. Was it fueled by British arrogance, or was it, as some argue, the result of a particularly argumentative group of colonists who read too much Rousseau and hated being told what to do? You take a side street and stumble onto a scene, a group of young men painting a crude effigy of a British tax collector. It's stuffed with straw, and someone stuck a note on it. No taxation without representation. A little on the nose, but it gets the point across. The anger builds slowly. You'd think it would be one big fire, but it's more like a kettle on the boil. Boycotts of British goods, public shaming of loyalists, committees of correspondence popping up like mushrooms after a storm. But nothing quite prepares you for the Tea Party. You stand on the edge of Griffin's Wharf on a cold December evening in 1773. It smells like fish rope and salt. You watch as figures disguised badly as Mohawk Indians quietly climb aboard the Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver. They're not here to make speeches, just work. Crates are lifted, hacked open, and tossed into the black water with wet, hollow thuds. 342 chests of tea sink slowly into Boston Harbor, and with them, any real hope of British leniency. The message is clear and unsophisticated: we're done. What's funny is, many colonists weren't even thrilled about the act. It was extreme theatrical and very bad for trade, but it felt like something had to happen. The colonies had been poked one too many times, and this was the splash. You walk home past shuttered taverns and dark windows, hearing only the faint dripping of harbor water off wooden hulls. There's a sense that history has just bent ever so slightly but unmistakably. Tea taxes and tempers. It's not a revolution yet, but it smells like one. The day the empire blinked, you wake to the sound of boots. Not just one or two, but a rhythm, a foreign rhythm. Redcoats have arrived in force. It's April 19th, 1775, and you're in a small Massachusetts village called Lexington. The fog is low, the grass is wet, and the breeze carries an unease so sharp you could cut your bread with it. You peek out from a wooden barn and see both sides assembling. It's not war yet, not officially, but everyone here knows something's going to snap. A few dozen colonial militiamen, farmers, blacksmiths, merchants line up in nervous rows, some still buttoning their coats. Captain John Parker, weathered and whispering, tells them not to fire unless fired upon. They nod like men who just want to go home, but won't. Then they come the British column, hundreds strong, bright coats, bayonets catching faint light, drummers keeping a heartbeat none of the locals want to follow. The air changes. A dog barks. Someone coughs. And then pop. No one knows who fired first. Historians still argue whether it was an accident, a misfire, or a deliberate spark. But the result is the same. A few seconds of silence shatter into chaos. You see smokemen shouting, limbs jolting. Some run. Others stand frozen. A few fall. You duck behind a barrel. Your heart beats like a blacksmith's hammer. And in that instant, something strange happens, not just in Lexington, but in the story of the world. The British Empire, massive structure global, is blinking. Not collapsing, not retreating, just blinking, like it can't quite believe someone dared raise a hand. By the end of the day, the fight has surged down the road to Concord. The redcoats march back under constant fire from behind trees, walls, windows. You're running with the militia, now ducking behind stone fences and poking at the enemy from cover. You learn quickly this isn't going to be a gentleman's war. There's no neat battlefield, no time for fanfare. Just people who know their land and intend to keep it. In taverns that night, stories spread like wildfire. Did you hear they stood their ground? The British broke ranks. The words grow bigger in each telling, and by morning this skirmish has become something larger. Myth is setting in. From London to Lisbon to Calcutta, observers are puzzled. How did local farmers and shopkeepers just stand up to Britannia? You ride the wave of adrenaline, the first of many. This isn't a war for independence yet, but the colonies have learned they can make the empire flinch. And they like the feeling. Paper pens and a dangerous declaration. It's now the summer of 1776, and you've made your way to Philadelphia. It smells like sweat, ink, horse dung, and revolution. Inside the State House, what will one day be called Independence Hall, it's sweltering. There are flies. There is shouting. There is history in the making, and frankly, it's a little humid. You slip in the back and find yourself among 56 men arguing over commas, clauses, and consequences. They wear wool in July because that's what dignity demands. You sit in the corner trying not to sneeze, watching Thomas Jefferson lean awkwardly over a too-short writing desk. The quill in his hand scratches like sandpaper on parchment. This is not a performance. It's barely even coordinated. These men don't fully trust each other. They're from different colonies with different interests, dialects, debts, and tempers. But one thing unites them: they've decided to commit treason with ink. The Declaration of Independence is being born not with trumpets, but with edits. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness only made it through after several rewrites. Jefferson had originally written something about property, but it didn't quite sing. Franklin, always the editor, added flourishes. Adams argued about tone. You glance around the room and realize something: these men are terrified. They should be. Signing this document doesn't just say, we want to break up. It says, we're replacing you. To the British Crown, it's not a letter, it's a challenge. Historians still debate whether they truly believed they could win, or if they were betting their lives on principle alone. The final signing is quiet. The men come forward one by one, each signature like a bell toll. John Hancock signs big, famously big. When asked why, he shrugs and says something like, so the king won't need his spectacles. You feel the hairs on your neck rise. Back outside, the document is read aloud in the square. A crowd gathers. Some cheer, some frown, some don't understand all the words. But the idea takes root. Something official has happened. The world has tilted. You stare at the page. Ink dries slowly in July. And with it, so does the bond to an empire. A ragged army on frozen feet. Welcome to Valley Forge. It's winter 1777 and you're cold. No, really cold. Not the cozy, bring me a blanket kind of cold. This is the kind that cracks your knuckles and seeps into your teeth. Snow crunches beneath your boots, but it's not snow exactly. It's mixed with ash, mud, and just a hint of despair. You trudge between rows of rough-hewn huts where smoke barely escapes from ill-fitting roofs. Inside, barefoot men wrap their feet in rags. Some are stirring weak broth. Others just sit staring at nothing in particular. You wonder if they're thinking about home. Some haven't been paid in months. Some have never fired a musket in actual combat. Many won't live to see spring. This is the Continental Army in its lowest hour, but also, oddly, its turning point. General George Washington walks slowly through the camp cloak, flapping, nodding to each man like he remembers their name. His face is grim but unyielding. You've never seen anyone wear exhaustion so commandingly. The army is crumbling, but he's here every day, and so they stay. You hear the whisper of another named von Steuben. He's a Prussian officer who arrived with flair lies about his credentials and a deep love for order. His methods, odd. He curses in 3 languages. He rewrites the training manual from scratch. And suddenly, men who could barely march in unison last month are drilling like professionals. Historians still debate whether it was Steuben's drills, Washington's presence, or sheer stubbornness that saved the army. Maybe all three. Maybe just the fact that they refused to go home. By February, something begins to change. Men stand straighter. Rifles are cleaner. The camp smells faintly less like death and slightly more like discipline. They're not just surviving, they're preparing. Because while the British sleep in city comfort in Philadelphia just a few miles away, this ragged army is transforming. Slowly, painfully, but truly. And in the spring, the world will meet a different kind of continental soldier. Global eavesdropping, France joins the fray. Now you're in Paris. It's 1778, and the air smells like smoke, perfume, and powdered ambition. You walk into the salons and drawing rooms where silk rustles more loudly than anyone dares to speak, but they're all talking quietly, delightedly about the Americans. Yes, those Americans. The scruffy rebels with muddy boots and no formal dining habits. France is obsessed. You sip weak wine next to diplomats who lean in to whisper updates from across the Atlantic like juicy gossip. Did you hear the colonists actually beat the British at Saratoga Gas? Fans flutter. Someone pretends not to care. But the truth is, this changes everything. France has been licking its wounds ever since the 7 Years' War. They lost Canada, they lost influence, and most importantly, they lost face. Now here's a chance to embarrass Britain beautifully, to strike back not with soldiers first, but with silver ships and a hint of revolutionary romance. Behind the scenes, Benjamin Franklin is dazzling everyone in silk suits he doesn't understand. He's wearing a beaver hat indoors. Women adore him. Aristocrats call him the philosophe sauvage, the wise wild man. His charm, his wit, and his barely concealed desperation are working. Historians still debate whether France entered the war out of ideology or petty revenge. Probably both. Maybe neither. But in 1778, the Treaty of Alliance is signed, and suddenly it's not just colonies fighting an empire, it's empires fighting each other. You shift back to the Americas where French ships arrive like a dream. Cannons, fleets, uniforms with epaulets you can't even describe. The Continental Army, once starving in snow, now fights beside professionals. But the revolution isn't just going transatlantic, it's going viral. In Versailles, ideas are shifting. Maybe kings aren't divine whispers, one noble to another, careful not to be overheard. Enlightenment thinkers start quoting Jefferson. The word liberty becomes fashionable. Dangerous but fashionable. In Haiti, enslaved workers are listening too. On British ships, sailors murmur about freedom in strange accents. From Ireland to India, something has begun to crack. The American Revolution is no longer just American. It's a global story now. Women enslaved and forgotten voices. You've heard the speeches, watched the declarations, and marched beside the soldiers. But now you take a quieter path into kitchens, backfields, and corners of history, not gilded in memory. It's easy to forget, surrounded by cannon fire and continental congresses, that most people in the colonies weren't holding muskets or writing manifestos. They were living the revolution in quieter, harder ways. You walk into a small farmhouse where a woman kneads bread with sore wrists. Her husband is off fighting somewhere. She hasn't heard from him in months. She listens to distant rumors and hopes the war won't come to her doorstep. Meanwhile, she plants barters, repairs, raises children, and keeps a diary the size of a prayer book. Some women want more than survival. You hear the voice of Abigail Adams echo through a letter, "Remember the ladies." She asks her husband John, yes, that John, to consider women's rights in this new republic. He chuckles in reply, politely. Elsewhere, black men and women live lives tethered to revolution they didn't choose. Enslaved in fields and houses, many over here talk of liberty and wonder quietly if those words will ever mean them too. You pass a plantation where one man has just fled, guided by moonlight and rumor. Some who escape head straight for British lines because the redcoats, not the patriots, have promised them freedom. Irony, like smoke, hangs heavy over the whole thing. Others stay and resist in subtler ways. They break tools. They share news. They remember names. Native Americans, too, watch the revolution unfold with wary calculation. For some tribes, the British are the lesser evil. For others, neutrality is the only hope. You sit beside a council fire and hear one elder say, "No matter who wins, our land shrinks." Historians still argue whether the revolution truly offered liberty or simply redistributed power. For many, it was the latter, a shift in flag, not in fate. But here in these overlooked spaces, you find the real complexity of revolution. It wasn't just fought on battlefields, it was endured in lives history nearly forgot. The world watches Haiti, Ireland, and the ripples. You're standing on a pier in Cap Français Saint-Domingue, what we now call Haiti. The sun is rising, staining the water orange. Around you, merchants shout, dock hands haul barrels, and enslaved workers move like shadows. But beneath the bustle, something else is moving, an idea. It drifts across the docks in Creole and French and whispers. Liberté, revolution. Words carried from across the sea from the mouths of Americans and French philosophers. You notice one man pause as he loads sugar crates. He's listening more than working. Here in Saint-Domingue, the richest colony in the world, people are watching. The enslaved majority, the free black elite, the poor whites, the Grand Blanc, they all hear the cracks forming an empire. You cross to Ireland, where the streets of Dublin churn with tension. Irish thinkers and rebels are reading Jefferson, translating pain, dreaming of self-rule. But they know something the Americans didn't: what happens when your revolution is crushed. Back in India, a Persian interpreter notes the American rebellion in the records of the Mughal court. British East India Company officers glance at newspapers and wonder, what if revolt spreads? In the hills of the Scottish Highlands, a veteran of the British Army returns bitter, wondering what he fought for. In West Africa, coastal kings ask British merchants about the war. In Poland, a man named Kosciuszko, inspired by the revolution, dreams of leading his own people to freedom. You'll hear that name again. Historians still debate how directly the American Revolution influenced other uprisings. But the pattern is there: where liberty was spoken, rebellion followed, sometimes years later, sometimes not at all. Back in Haiti, the man who had paused is now speaking. He's quoting Rousseau. Others are listening. They've heard the Declaration too. You're now in Philadelphia again, but this time it's 1787. The war's over. The air smells like ink, ambition, and a little sweat. You slip into the old State House. Yes, the same one where Jefferson had once scratched out his dangerous declaration. Now it's full of older, wearier men. They're back: Washington, Madison, Hamilton, Franklin, and they're trying to figure out what comes next. The Articles of Confederation not working. Too weak. States are bickering like siblings over inheritance. Trade is chaos. There are rumors of rebellion in the countryside. Something must be done. And so begins the Constitutional Convention, a summer-long group project with no instructions, 13 partners, and zero chance of unanimous agreement. You watch as they argue over everything: states' rights, slavery, taxation, the shape of the legislature. One man wants a king. Another threatens to leave if his state doesn't get equal votes. Someone suggests a three-branch government, and people blink in polite confusion. James Madison scribbles constantly. Alexander Hamilton speaks with the intensity of someone who's already halfway through a one-man Broadway show. Benjamin Franklin naps with one eye open. Eventually, something resembling a compromise takes shape. A Senate, a House, a president, not a monarch, but still kind of fancy. It's not perfect, not even close, but it's something. Then the loopholes start creeping in. You watch as enslaved people are counted as 3/5 of a person for population totals enough to boost representation without granting rights. Voting is left vague. Property requirements linger. The word slavery is never mentioned, but its shadow darkens half the document. Historians still debate whether this was the best possible outcome or a deeply flawed system from the start. Probably both. Maybe that's the point. Outdoors, someone reads aloud from the newly minted Constitution. It's full of noble ideals and careful silences. Some cheer, some squint. And you realize they're not just inventing democracy. They're inventing how to argue about democracy forever. Capitalism's favorite child is born. It's the early 1800s now, and you're walking through the rattling floorboards of an American textile mill. Cotton fibers float like ghosts in the sunlight. The revolution is over, but its engine has just started humming, and it smells like oil, wool, and sweat. The United States, newly independent, is flexing its economic muscles. You can feel it in the machines, the ledgers, the factory bells. This is the birth of an economy made for profit, made fast, made to grow whether the people beneath it do or not. You pass rows of women young, mostly feeding thread through spinning frames in New England factories. They're called mill girls, and they live under curfews, read moral pamphlets, and get paid just enough to keep going. It's work, and it's not nothing, but it's also exhausting. You step outside to see long wagons filled with southern cotton king of crops grown by enslaved hands. The cotton gin invented not long ago has supercharged demand. Now slavery, which many had hoped would fade, is more profitable than ever. And so a contradiction grows alongside the nation's GDP. A country founded on liberty is booming on the backs of people denied it. The Constitution didn't stop it. Capitalism loves a loophole. You find yourself in a northern port where merchants track the value of rice, tobacco, cotton, human lives translated into prices. Banks rise. Insurance firms sprout like weeds. The first whispers of Wall Street carry on the wind. Historians still debate whether the revolution enabled this growth or simply failed to prevent it. Was it a victory for freedom or just a change in owners? But here's the twist: ideas of liberty still echo in strange corners. Labor unions begin to form. Formerly enslaved people in the North write newspapers. Mill girls protest hours. Even inside the machine, someone starts asking who it's actually built for. And capitalism, child of revolution, keeps running smarter, faster, louder, with no intention of stopping. Echoes in every uprising since. You're standing in a crowd, but not in Boston or Philadelphia. This time it's Cairo, or Kyiv, or Tiananmen Square. The flags are different. The languages shift. The demands vary. But the feeling, that electric current of rebellion, is eerily familiar. Someone is waving a handwritten sign. Another is shouting into a megaphone. Somewhere else, someone just whispered the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You hear it and something clicks. You've been here before. Because the American Revolution, for all its flaws and contradictions, left behind something bigger than it intended: a template. It wasn't the first revolution, not by a long shot, but it was loud, it was written down, and most importantly, it was exportable. Suddenly, power wasn't a divine right. Government wasn't a gift. Consent wasn't optional. You flip through time like pages of a protest banner. Haitians in 1791, enslaved, enraged, determined, rise up. They've read the American text. They will go further. The French, just 1 year after the Constitution, storm a prison and reinvent chaos. In 1848, revolts spark like wildfire across Europe. In 1916, Irish rebels declare a republic. In 1947, India steps away from empire. In 1989, Berlin cracks open. In 2011, the Arab Spring blossoms. Historians still argue how direct the influence was. But ideas travel strange routes. They hitch rides in cargo holds, sermons, pamphlets, songs. You're now in a classroom in Ghana. The students are reading the Declaration, not for what it meant to Jefferson, but for what it could mean to them. Their revolution hasn't happened yet, or maybe it has. Maybe it's always happening. The American Revolution didn't finish anything. It started echoes. And centuries later, they're still ringing.